Denmo.
The king in the north!
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Jack Denmo podcast. Before doing anything, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. If you're new here, I have dope guests every single week, sometimes YouTubers, sometimes comedians, but today we have a classic rock legend, a radio broadcaster that's based out of Canada, Alan Cross.
Hello. What a crappy day outside, but I did get a parking spot out front, so that makes up for everything.
Yeah, see, that's a big thing, guys. A lot of the time, the mood of the guest is based on if they get a parking spot or not.
It is.
So it was a good day today. Alan, buddy, I mean, my dad and his generation fucking love you, man. I've heard you on the radio a million times, but
40 years.
For those of, a lot of 18 to 30-year-olds listen to this mostly, so explain what you do to them.
All right. Well, I am a radio guy primarily, but I'm also a writer. I'm also a documentarian. I'm also a consultant. I'm also a TV person. I do all kinds of different media stuff, but all circles around rock, specifically alternative rock and secondarily classic rock. So if it has anything to do with rock music or the radio industry or the music industry, I'm kind of involved in it in some way or another.
Yeah, you're one of the guys that made it, because I know a lot of people growing up probably wanted to be radio guys, but you are the radio guy.
Yeah, but remember when I started, I mean, back in 1981 when I got my first full-time job.
Okay.
Radio was one of the only things in the entertainment universe that you could enjoy. There was television, but you probably had at best 15 channels. You could go to a bookstore. You could go to a Cineplex, which were brand new, where they had maybe 3-4 screens at a theater, or you could read a book. And that was about it. Those were your big entertainment choices, right? There were no video games, there was no internet, there was no social media, there were no smartphones, there was none of that sort of stuff. So radio had a much bigger piece of the pie, the entertainment pie, and a share of your mind than it does today. And it has evolved quite a bit over the last 40 years that I've been in the business. And what's remarkable for me, at least, is that I've managed to stay in the business despite all these changes.
Right.
And I've been very, very lucky. Let's just put that right out front. Dodged a bunch of bullets, been in the right place at the right time. But at the same time, I've understood that there is a best before date on my forehead that I can't see. And it is my job to keep changing the date on that forehead, and pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back. And I found a couple of ways in which I've been able to do that. And so far they've worked. Like I say, 40 years deep into this whole thing.
What are some of those bullets that you had to dodge?
Changes in management, changes in bosses, changes in employment status, changes in people I was working with, changes in the nature of the industry. I mean, when I started playing in this business, I was playing records.
Right.
I was, 45s and LPs and what we called carts. And, everything has been completely modernized and automated. And, the idea of actually physically putting something on a turntable now is really, really weird because it's all digitized and we have these giant hard drive playback units. Just having to deal with the changes in technology that forced the industry itself to be driven in completely different directions.
So you were an analog guy before, right?
Completely analog. I mean, I was the greatest tape editor you've ever seen in your life.
So How hard is it to edit tape, man?
Well, it was difficult. I mean, we had big 10.5-inch reels of recording tape, and if you wanted to cut something out, you actually spread it out on what's called a splicing block, the length of tape on a splicing block. You marked it with a grease pencil, and then you cut it with a razor blade. You then discarded all the tape you didn't need, and then cut it again, and then put the two ends together with a piece of splicing tape. Now,
Sketchy, man.
Think about how easy that is to do on a laptop right now.
Oh, butter.
It's nothing. I mean, I've got Pro Tools at home, and it's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
That I'm done would have taken me an hour in the old days, but I was really good at it because I figured out how to splice it very accurately without making it sound like it was a splice. But that's like saying I'm the greatest buggy whip manufacturer in the world.
Right.
It's just not. It's just not necessary anymore.
So where were most of the cuts? Like just between songs?
No. Sometimes you would be reading a script and you'd flub a line.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And then you'd have to
voiceover.
And then you'd have to start, pick up that line again. And then when you were finished reading your script, you would have to go back and edit out all the flubs.
Gotcha.
And that would be, physically cutting tape.
So like for commercials, mostly voiceovers, narrations.
All that sort of stuff. All ongoing history stuff. And the first 100 and something shows was done on tape. So, all my voice tracks had to be edited.
Tape's expensive,
and tape's expensive because you would end up at the end of the day, you would end up with all these little 5 and 3 and 2 inch and half-inch bits of tape all over the floor, and that was garbage, right?
True. Tarantino still uses tape.
He does, and because he understands there's a certain feel, a certain aesthetic that comes with analog stuff that if you for certain effects it works great.
I know there's the term for classic rock, like the warmth.
Yeah, there is a
audio.
warmth to analog because you're not sampling anything, and I don't care how high a sampling rate you use. Although some of the lossless formats they're using right now, the codecs they're using now, are pretty good. But if you're recording an analog, you're recording exactly what is the audio that's floating through the air, with no sampling, with no. And when I say sampling, I mean the sample rate. To mess with anything. I think analog sounds better, but it's expensive and it's outdated and it's inconvenient.
Yeah, there's a couple cool you probably know a million of them, but I know like certain bands, they would have analog going and they would record
Arcade Fire.
Lots of experimentation. Yeah, Arcade Fire, they record live a lot of the time.
Jack White, Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything from Lenny in like 15 years.
He's more into real estate right now. He's developing.
He's in Brazil, isn't he? Like a horse farm?
Bahamas.
Bahamas?
I think it's where his full-time home is right now. Last time I talked to him was in the Bahamas, although he did have some place in Brazil. He, if you're in Toronto, the Bisha condominiums, he designed that.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's kind of cool. Last I saw, he was on a horse. And he was like,
I know. And Lenny Kravitz, 55 years old, more six-packs on one human being than you've ever seen on anybody else.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Some people are just a little more ripped than others.
This guy is ripped.
Yeah. Guy's built, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else did a bunch of, back in the day, everything was on analog. But
everything was until the early to mid '90s, when everybody started getting Macintosh computers into their studios, and you ended up having Pro Tools or whatever digital audio workstation software was available. Digital started really coming in using tape, but digital sampling started coming in the late '70s. I want to say that one of the first English beat albums was recorded digitally. It wasn't mastered or mixed digitally, but it was certainly recorded digitally. I think there was a Ry Cooder album that was also recorded back then.
So there's probably like a transitionary period after.
There was, because you had to completely redo all the equipment in your studio.
Everybody had to learn the new way.
Well, that's it. And then you had to convince somebody that had to get rid of those dual 24-track 2-inch recorders that they had spent tens of thousands of dollars on, and explain to them that they were old-fashioned and outmoded, and you had to get something else.
So in the 90s, were you around people that were like, nah, this new digital shit?
No, there was an inevitability feeling to it, because digital was the thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Everybody welcomed it. They're like, yo,
okay. Well, part of the issue was, digital was the future. Digital could, allow you to do all these different really cool things, and we embraced it because nobody liked editing tape.
No.
Nobody, in radio, for example, we hated. What we would do is we would record the commercials on 2-inch, on quarter-inch tape. Then we would have to mix it on an 8-track tape with all the different tracks to go along with it, and the sound effects and music and so on. And then we would have to mix that down, and then we would have to take that mix and put it on these things that look like 8 tracks called carts, and that's where your commercials lived. They lived on these tapes, these tape cartridges, and you would have to put, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 commercials on one long cart. If you had different versions, for example, of a commercial, it took a tremendous amount of time.
Probably a lot of cables everywhere too. Eh?
Oh,
just spaghetti.
It was just nuts. And then the other thing, if you were on the air, you had to go to the library. You had to physically pull out all your records.
Oh, true.
And then you played them, and then you had to file them at the end of your show. And then the same thing when CDs came along, you had to pull out all your CDs, and there was a big stack of them next to you, and then you had to file them at the end. I mean, now you can come in to start your radio shift 30 seconds before the top of whenever it is that you're supposed to begin. Back then, I would have to come in 45 minutes before my show.
Damn.
To pull all my records and CDs or whatever.
So you had an idea in your head, like, that's what I'm gonna play today.
Yes and no. Yes and no. If you were working at CFNY like I did, there was a tremendous amount of latitude given to the announcers about what they could play. There were some rules, but for the most part, we were encouraged to let our freak fly. Most of the radio stations, you were very, very tightly formatted, and you were not allowed to do that. However, as time went on and as radio science and the programming of radio became more and more adept, we had less and less to do as announcers. And
right.
That came to the music director, the program director, and now everything is very carefully programmed, and a lot of that has to do with the rise of computers. Because now you can do some audience research and you can do all kinds of collation with spreadsheets in terms of, what's the average like and passion score of a song and the dislike and all that sort of stuff. And you get a pretty good idea of what the majority of the audience wants to hear. Yeah,
smells like Teen Spirit.
Well,
Sweet Child of Mine.
They are songs that won't go away. And then what you do is you have, there are special music scheduling programs like Music Master. Okay. That and you set all these rules. Okay, this song has to. We know this song is a hit. And we know it has to play 5 times a day. So we're going to tell the computer to schedule it 5 times a day. But this song here, it's 15 years old. It's a hit, but we don't want to burn it out. Well, it can only be played once every 4 days.
Ooh, what's a song like that? For example,
let's say Pearl Jam "Jeremy," for example. It's an older song. So there's a real science. You have all these different categories. You have all these different rules of artist separation, tone separation, mood separation, key separation, all these things to create what should be a very smooth, seamless playlist of music.
Yeah, sometimes I'd be listening to the radio and I'd be like, man, it'd be cool if this song came on next. And then it did. And I'd be like, man, why is it that, I wanted that to come on?
Well, it met all the rules. I mean, when I was a music director, man, the amount of rules that we would program into the computer, and then it would spit out a day's 24 hours worth of music, and then we would go through it song by song, making sure the computer didn't screw up. Because occasionally what would happen is that if we were setting up a lot of rules, the computer would say there isn't a song that fills that criteria. So you'd have to go in and manually put one in.
So this song's too long.
It's songs too long, artist separation issues, intensity issues, something like that. And you just have to figure it out.
I know in Canada you have to play every other song Canadian, something like that.
Well, it's 35% for most radio stations, but some radio stations it's 40%.
Ooh, what's the difference? Why?
Because they really wanted to get a broadcast license, so they overpromised.
Oh,
that's what it was.
Oh, negotiation.
Well, it was a carrot, let's say. If you give us this license, we will play more Canadian music than we're required to.
More April Wine.
More Tragically Hip, more BTO, more Guess Who, more Neil Young,
Yeah. Never get old. Never get sick of Neil Young and BTO. Those two artists are sick.
So the problem with running a classic rock station is that they're not making classic rock anymore. So if they were to bump up the Canadian content requirements, what are you going to do? I mean, they're not playing any new classic rock. They're not making any new classic rock. So what you end up doing is playing Neil Young one more time or the Guess Who one more time. So there's all kinds of issues. But
yeah, I noticed a couple years ago, Q107 started playing new stuff, like 2000s. And I was like, whoa, this is weird.
Well, again, classic rock is a moving target. Radio stations really are looking to attract people between the ages of 25 and 54. And that's because that's where the bulk of your audience is. And the same thing happened with oldies radio stations. Your audience gets older and older and older, and they start dying off. So at some point, what you have to do is reset your radio station and make it a little bit younger, which while still maintaining that sort of classic, that timeless rock feel. And today, if you were, into Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones when they were around, you're in your 70s or in your 80s.
Yeah.
So
my dad, he's 67.
Well, there you go, upper 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And they're still, important people, important listeners. But the advertisers, it's all about that, 25, 54 thing. So you can't let your radio station get too old because your audience will disappear. So you have every once in a while you have to reset it, bring it back,
slip in some Green Day,
or some Foo Fighters, or but then follow it up with some AC/DC or some Led Zeppelin.
Hey guys, we got an ad. Did you guys know that 1 in 4 men over the age of 25 experience erectile dysfunction? And obviously 2 in 3 men at some point in their lives go through hair loss. Well, it sucks, boys. A lot of us go through it, but we don't want to talk about it or tell anybody about it, but it is a reality. Fortunately, there are companies like MyRocky that allow you to get a prescription for something that would help prevent that hair loss or help you maintain erections. MyRocky offers Cialis, they offer Viagra. They also have hair solutions for you guys out there that are losing your hair. So a lot of this stuff is backed by actual science, and the guys that are running this company are actually doctors and pharmacists. If you guys are interested in learning more about these products or using my discount code to get yourself a nice little deal, go to myrocky.ca and use the discount code JD25 for 25% off your first order. Boner pills, hair care, grooming, and everything in between, guys. Cialis, Viagra, all the goodies. Keep your dick hard with Jack Denmo. Yeah, I feel like, so everybody that came out in the 90s, they're listened to probably like the 40 to 50 range.
Yeah.
And then those guys are probably, I think that's like the most common age of Canada, like the median or something.
Something like that.
40 to 42, something like that.
So there's always a demographic bulge, and you have to follow that bulge. And let's think about it. The 90s, that was 30 years ago.
Fucking crazy.
That's a long time ago. Yeah. So if we were sitting here instead of 2021, we were sitting in 1991, 30 years before that would have been 1961.
Yeah.
So if you think that...
Elvis.
And the bad Elvis era.
Yeah.
I mean, the Beatles...
Not even the good Elvis era.
Beatles hadn't even hit yet.
No.
So, to think that somebody who is 18 or 19 years old right now...
Yeah.
should have much of an affinity with something that happened to 30 years ago. Let's just imagine an 18, 19-year-old in 1991 saying that, you really should listen to the music of 30 years ago. No.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of other factors
It's
involved.
guys like me that, like, my dad grew up, all he would play is that, and I just loved it, right?
That's the difference, because now there are at least 3 generations of rock fans.
Right.
And the last 2... not the last 2.
Like the OG fans are starting to
the
peace
OG
out.
Yeah, they're starting to peace out. You're right, but they, the second generation, which would be the ones that grew up in the '60s, they are the ones that have passed along their love of music to people like you. And then if you had kids, you would be passing along your love of music, whatever that might be, which would probably be a lot of stuff in the '90s and 2000s, but also the stuff that your dad showed you.
Yeah, I'd say for me it's like 70% classic rock, 30% new stuff.
That's different than it was, because there's a lot of music from, I guess, 68, starting about 68 moving forward. You get rid of mono records, you're into stereo,
No more 4 tracks.
No more 4 tracks. You're getting into really complicated, very high fidelity, very good music.
Yeah, like Pink Floyd and shit.
It's timeless. It's just good. I mean, I do some teaching at Humber College every once in a while, and one of the first things I do is ask everybody to pull out their phone and tell me the last 10 songs that they played. So, okay, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, AC/DC.
Nice.
Drake, The Weeknd, Led Zeppelin.
Whoa.
So it doesn't matter to the current generation when the song came out or what the genre is. All they care about is this a good song?
Yeah, great songs fucking slap.
Forever.
I have a buddy I live with, and he loves like rap but he has his Bluetooth speaker set up in the bathroom. So whenever anybody showers, they just play off like Alexa or whatever.
Right.
But it's connected to his phone, and when he's at work, sometimes he's a contractor. If I'm having a shower, whatever song is playing, it'll start playing on his job site too. So whenever I shower, I listen to "Can't You Hear Me Knocking" by the Rolling Stones. Okay. So to fuck with me, he'll like start playing like pop music, and I'll start yelling and get cheesed. But whenever I play that song, he lets it play.
Right.
And I asked him, like, why do you let that one play? He's like, 'cause it's a fucking sick song.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that song slaps.
Yeah, we can talk about the state of current music if you want, but let's just say that every generation has the biological right to believe that the music of their youth is the greatest music of all time. So there is no fighting it.
Well, that's how you gotta trust me, because I wasn't even there, and I still think it's the best. You know? Yeah, my dad, he was asking me, one of the questions was like, do you think that they're still making songs of that caliber in the 6 to 10 minute range? Because back then you could play songs that long.
Yeah, and the answer to your dad is no. Yeah. For the most part, the answer is no. And the answer is very complicated.
Let's break it down.
Most people are getting their music through streaming right now.
Yeah.
When you stream a song, the artist does not get paid unless you listen to at least 30 seconds of the song.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and that's across all streaming platforms. The song has to run for at least 31 seconds before anybody sees any payment.
That's like you're not even in the verse yet for most rock songs.
Well, so what do? You make sure that whatever you do in that first 31 seconds is enough to have people hang on.
Like a hook.
Like multiple hooks. Maybe you start with the chorus. You got a short intro. And whatever it is, there's a lot of sugary high that is in that first 31 seconds, so you get dragged to the point where the artist gets paid. Now, let's think of a song like Kashmir. When does the vocal come in? Better yet, let's think of a song like Where the Streets Have No Name from U2.
Oh, it's like 2 minutes almost.
It's a minute 45.
Oh, yeah.
Let's think of a song like Low Spark of High Heeled Boys from Traffic. You know, people get really bored really fast these days, and they hit the skip button. So there's all kinds of statistics that show what percentage of people will skip a song in the first, an unfamiliar song in the first 5 seconds, the first 10 seconds, the first 30 seconds. And music today, popular music today, has been all about making sure that they don't hit the skip button for 31 seconds.
Yeah, they got to hit some vocals at least 10 to 15 seconds.
That's it. You know, back when I was doing a lot of stuff on the radio, the average intro for a song, so we could talk over the intro before the vocals hit, 17, 18 seconds. Now it's 5.
Oh, that's
or
like
less.
It's 30% of what it was.
Well, yeah, and again, would you have a great song like Kashmir or Where the Streets Have No Name or Low Spark of High Heeled Boys today? Well, the answer is probably no, because you have to worry about everything, people skipping you because boring, get it. No, boring, skip.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot of bands, they would actually, I don't know how many of them did it. I know Zeppelin did it, and they would market their songs towards more of a like, hey, buy the album because you want to consume everything at once.
Well, that was their manager, Peter Grant.
Yeah.
Peter Grant refused to allow any singles to be released from the albums. I mean, a couple slipped through, but his thing was, no, you want the song, you buy the album.
From all accounts, that guy seems like a bad motherfucker.
Peter Grant?
Yeah.
You do not. He was a vicious human being.
Did you ever see Vinyl on
yes,
HBO?
Yes.
That show was so fucking good.
I liked it, and I was so upset when it was canceled after one season.
I was blown away, man.
I mean, okay, so they took a few liberties, but for the most part, they were talking about real things that happened in the early 70s. Yes, the secretary had a bottom drawer full of drugs.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody was out drinking all the time. Yes, there was a lot of cocaine around. Yes, the artists were weird.
Yeah.
But it's
it
too
was
bad.
Awesome, man.
I thought it was great. I really did.
What liberties did they take with the show? Because I know Robert Plant didn't really seem like Robert Plant. But
what they did was they invented the record company.
Oh yeah.
With the story where I think it's in the first episode where the Mercer Art Center collapses. It didn't quite happen that way.
No.
But, it doesn't matter because it was a lightly fictionalized version of real events.
Did they really like order a bunch of CDs and then dump them and be like, oh yeah, they went missing?
Yeah, that was a standard sort of practice back, and it wasn't so much CD, it was vinyl. I mean, if you look in the East River, if you look in the East River in New York, and you troll the bottom, it'd be full of records.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's kind of sick.
Oh yeah, no, it was super corrupt.
Yeah, that's
connected with the mob, and artists were getting screwed out of their royalties, and it was pretty wild.
Oh yeah, I know that. Peter Grant was one of the only managers that like got his band money, and I think that was one of the big reasons he became notorious.
The deal was before Peter Grant came along, the band the band was paid what the promoter thought you were worth. Essentially,
so flat fee.
At the end of the gig, you went and you got whatever money the promoter was going to give you.
Okay.
Peter Grant went in and said, no, you're making money off us. You get 10%, we get 90%.
Whoa.
And that completely changed the economics of touring. Everybody followed Peter Grant.
Before that, like, what were the Beatles getting paid? Like that bullshit behind doors?
Yeah, they were getting bugger all. I mean, they play Shea Stadium in 1966. I can't remember what the gate was at that. It was less than $400,000. But they were getting nothing. Nothing.
I know they got screwed out of their loyalties, or Paul did.
That's a long story, but there was they weren't making a lot of money on their record sales to begin with, and then they had a situation with a manager named Alan Klein and Dick James Music and Northern Songs, and he ended up losing a bunch of music. But he got it back in the end. He did get it all back.
Oh, it took him forever.
And part of the reason he didn't get it back right away was Michael Jackson bought them.
That's right, he bought it, and they were buddies.
And they were recording together in the early 80s, and Paul says to Michael, here's a piece of advice. Publishing. You want to own music publishing, and because that's a steady source of income.
Yeah.
And Michael Jackson goes, oh, okay, I'll keep that in mind. And then Thriller hits, and he ends up with a ton of cash.
Oh, what a slapper that was.
Northern Songs comes up for sale, and he outbids Paul McCartney for Paul McCartney songs.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That was
snake move.
It was a dick move. Let's face it.
Yeah, I think he outbid him, and I feel like Paul McCartney had the money, but he probably just felt it.
No, he didn't quite have the money.
Is that it?
Yeah, it was less than $50 million, which seems like nothing today, but I don't think Paul McCartney could raise enough money to buy that stuff.
I saw it was more than that. I think it was like around $100 million.
No, not that time.
No.
Now that catalog is worth over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, so I heard that because Michael Jackson was in big debt for years before he passed away.
He was spending far more money than he was bringing in, and what he ended up doing was putting up his publishing catalog holdings as collateral against a loan from Sony Records.
That's right.
And then when he died and defaulted, all that money went back to a company called Sony ATV.
Good call by them.
A very good call by them.
I don't know if you remember this, but right after he died, like 2 weeks later, there'd be some shitty commercial for like, Nissan or Party City, and it would have like a Beatles song in it, but it'd be a cover of the Beatles song.
Okay, that's a different sort of situation. There are two types of publishing. There is the intellectual property of the song, and then there's the actual stuff put down on tape or on computer that is the sound of the song. So there's that's called the master recording, and then there's the publishing. Publishing is there's something in the United States called a blanket license, which means you don't have to ask permission to cover somebody's song. So what they would have done in that particular case is covered a Beatles song, but they would have also had to go to Apple Music, the Beatles company, and say, we would like to have permission to use this song in this commercial. It won't be the Beatles original because you'll never grant us permission to do that, but we will do this cover, and you will get X percentage of whatever it is that we earn from it. So that's how it would work.
So do you think that because of in light of his death, though, a lot of those deals started going through more than they would before?
It's been something that's been happening since about the middle 80s, where artists are looking for different avenues of revenue. And it's nobody even bats an eye. There are certain artists that will not allow their songs to be licensed for commercial purposes.
Neil Young?
Neil Young would be number one.
I know Zeppelin was like that until they did a car commercial.
They did a Cadillac commercial.
2005 or something.
Yeah, so they made a lot of money on that one. And then AC/DC wasn't doing anything until they did some Tellus commercials.
Tellus?
Yeah, they did.
Kind of sucks.
They had a cockatoo doing Thunderstruck.
Oh, okay. That song was sick.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So I know that they paid $500,000 or so to use two different edits of Thunderstruck for those commercials.
Of the money that, like, let's say AC/DC, Thunderstruck, good example. What percentage of that money goes to the band versus management in the company?
That's on an individual basis. Really hard to tell. But the band, it's not so much the band; it's the composers.
Right. The writers. Yeah.
The writers. So if Angus and Brian wrote the song, well, they'll get the money. And there's another thing called neighboring rights, which some countries have. Canada has it, others don't. So
Black Keys is a band that's pretty dope. They're newer, but they that's how they actually started getting attention, is because their songs would be licensed everywhere. Like, that was how they made most of their money.
I don't remember that. It's possible. I do know that they did, once they struck it big, they started licensing some of their stuff.
Yeah.
And again, nobody's selling. You got to understand, nobody's selling records anymore. They used to be the biggest source of revenue anybody had, but they're not selling records anymore. So you got to find new ways to replace that revenue, and licensing to television, to commercials, to movies, to movie trailers, to corporate videos, to any number of things is a really important thing right now.
Yeah, it used to be a whole package. Like, there was a lot of effort put into the album design, the cover art.
Not anymore.
No.
It's not that necessary. I mean, album artwork and liner notes, that's a thing of the past, which is unfortunate.
It's kind of cool, though. Like, back then, if you were an artist, I mean, obviously these guys got ripped off big time. But, like, it's in the budget to, like, if you want to do some weird album cover, some weird custom paper in there.
Well, yeah, you can do whatever you want as long as you realize that you're going to have to pay it back through future sales.
Yeah.
And it's called recoupables.
Right.
So when you spend a lot of money creating an album and recording it and all the rest of it, that costs money, and that money has to be paid back. And the record company acts basically as a bank. They advance you the money to do all this really cool stuff, and then they basically garnish your wages going forward.
Best deal in the history of deals, probably Zeppelin. Worst deal in the history of deals back in the day. Who do you think got it the worst?
Oh, God, there's so many. It's a lot of the black artists of the 1950s, they were bought off with a fur coat and a Cadillac.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Morris Levy who ran a label called Roulette Records in the 60s and 70s. The story, his biggest artist was Tommy James and the Shondells. He probably he was ripped off to the tune of $50-75 million.
Fuck.
There's lots.
That's
lots
heavy.
Of horror stories.
I know some of them, like Badfinger. You know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an awful one.
Yeah, there's so many awful things. I remember, even the Beatles back in the 1960s, they were getting a penny per record.
Yeah, that's nasty.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I heard, like, Joe Budden, who's a rapper in the early 2000s, somebody asked him. I think he said like 10 cents a record is what he gets, but still, it's bad.
It's yeah. Now, usually, so let's say the wholesale price of a record is $10. Okay, so that's what has to be divided up with the record label and the band and their publisher. Publisher gets 50% of publishing. The producer, who probably gets points on the recording.
Yeah, a little percentage.
Then who else would get paid? The composers, and then the rest of the band. So, but that $10 quickly becomes like 90 cents. But that's the nature of the game. It's always been the nature of the game. One of the craziest things I know is that in some contracts, they've never really been updated for the digital era. So there's still existing contracts that deal with CDs or vinyl. And in those contracts, if you dig down deep, there is a amount of money, a percentage, that is deducted from the payments for breakage. Because back in the day, some records would fall off a truck.
So laundering, pretty much.
Well, no. Breakage would be, actual damage in transit.
Oh, okay.
So some records would get water damaged, or some CDs would be crushed or broken or whatever. There'd be a certain percentage. In the digital age, some contracts still have percentages deducted for breakage.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Eh?
What's the break?
What's the percentage?
I don't know. It depends.
5 to 10 or something?
I don't know.
That's evil.
It really is.
Wow. That's interesting. I know, so Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, there was that big incident where she wrote that article about how the record label kind of fucked Nirvana.
It was
that was like a big eye opener.
It wasn't an article. It was she was speaking to a conference.
It was a conference?
Yeah, and that was about 2000, 2001.
Oh, was that far after?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was in the 90s.
No, she did it around 2000, 2001. And it became a very famous, and what she did was she broke down where the money went and how the money actually flowed in the music industry, and she was not wrong. But that was 20-some years ago, and things have changed a little bit because there is no physical product to speak of anymore.
Yeah, they were like some of the last bands of that era to...
Yeah, everything really began to change around 2000.
So the last bands probably would have been Nirvana, Green Day.
Last bands were the boy bands.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so
yeah,
it
forgot
would
about those guys.
2000, 2001, which was the peak of CD sales.
Yeah,
that's when they hit the absolute highest, and it was Britney Spears, it was NSYNC, it was Christina Aguilera, it was Backstreet Boys. That was the last big push because Napster and the idea of file sharing had just started in 1999. In June of 1999.
Metallica blew that up too,
and that came a few years later.
Oh, was that after? Okay.
But so they knocked out Napster. But there was LimeWire, there was Kazaa, there was audio video.
I used LimeWire.
Something Galaxy, Audio Galaxy Satellite, and BearShare. There was tons of them, and the only thing that really stopped the file sharing, two things. Number one, iTunes came along and made it much easier to get proper songs digitally. And more importantly, in the early 2000s, streaming comes along. And you can get any song you want basically for free. So why would you bother stealing anything?
Yeah.
So piracy still exists, and I don't know why, because it seems like a lot of trouble. But it's been wiped out to probably by 90% because of streaming.
What are your favorite rock conspiracy theories?
Conspiracy theories?
Yeah.
That punk rock was invented by the KGB.
Whoa.
That's a really long, weird story that I've deconstructed several times, and it turns out to be it's debunked. It's not true.
Oh, it's been debunked? Oh,
yeah.
That would have been a good one.
It's a good story, but it's been debunked. That's a good one.
What was the theory behind that one?
The theory was that the KGB was going to use this music to destabilize the West.
Wow. So like just create division and unrest amongst people?
Yes.
Like a class thing?
It was definitely a class thing.
Wow.
Yeah, but no, it never happened. And it was there was a guy that was apparently an insider who came clean, and he was full of shit.
He was trolling, eh?
He was trolling. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Conspiracy theories. I'll say this right out. The Kurt Cobain conspiracy theories about him being murdered, don't think it's true.
You don't believe it, eh?
No, not. I've spent so much time looking into this. There is what people want is a nice, neat ending to everything. They watch too much.
That's what I want.
Yeah, they watch
I
too
think Courtney did it.
No, she didn't. Would never have done it. There's too much. People watch CSI too much and expect everything to be wrapped up in 43 minutes. Lots of loose ends, a lot of misinformation, a lot of people working for their own agendas and their own rules. No, it was he was a mentally ill person in terrible, terrible pain, both mentally and physically, and he shot himself.
What do you think about Jimi Hendrix?
The Jimi Hendrix one was strictly an overdose. Back then the drugs weren't so good, and people were a little bit crazy about how they were administered, and they weren't watching out for each other, and he died.
Who had the sketchiest death, do you think, out of all the rock stars?
A sketchy rock star death. Well, one of the saddest ones was Lane Staley of Alice in Chains.
Oh, I read about that. It sounds awful. He's in the apartment?
He's in the apartment. He had all this money from all these records that he had sold, became a hardcore heroin addict, spent all his day locked in this condo, painting and playing video games, and his dealer would come to the door, and He would eat all kinds of candy because that's what heroin addicts do. He had no teeth at the end, and he disappeared. Nobody heard from him for 2 weeks, and they broke into his apartment, and there he was with a needle in his arm, and he had been lying there for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so that's a really.
Yeah, I heard he was like 80 pounds or something.
Oh, he was wasted away to nothing.
Yeah,
and that's a sad one. Amy Winehouse, that's another really sad one. She was left alone by her bodyguard in her room, listening to music, taking shots of vodka. That was the end.
Yeah, was she have heroin too?
She has all kinds of issues. Bon Scott going out and drinking, choking out his own vomit.
Yep.
John Bonham.
He was in a car, right?
Yes, they found him in a car.
Yeah, because maybe it had something to do with overnight.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the story was, but again, it was alcohol poisoning. John Bonham.
40 vodka shots.
40 shots. 40 shots of vodka.
Legendary.
Yeah. Don't do that, kids.
Yeah,
You'll die.
Don't be like John Bonham.
What happened with Brian Jones and the Stones? I can't remember.
That's an interesting one. Brian Jones was fired, and then shortly thereafter, he was found drowned at the bottom of his pool. And at the time, it was ruled an accident, but there is a story that will not go away that a handyman who had been working around the house got into a fight with him, and somehow Jones ended up at the bottom of the pool, and this handyman confessed on his deathbed to having been responsible for
No
his
way.
death. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. What do you think happened? Was it the accident or the handyman?
You know what? That one I don't know. I mean, there's so many.
That sounds sketchy.
So this is 1969, right?
Yeah.
So it's a long time ago, and people's memories are weird, and it was. I don't, a deathbed confession. You kind of want to be a little. You want to believe the guy because he's dying, but at the same time, maybe this is just his last gasp at fame. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did his background info check out? Like, did he work as a repairman?
Oh yeah, no. It was definitely the guy at
okay.
Brian Jones at that time was living in the house once owned by A.A. Milne, the guy who created Winnie the Pooh.
Whoa,
So
that's a flex.
It's just a weird random thing.
Did he have any signs on his body of like restraint, like a bruise or?
You know what? I'm not sure. I'm not
Look into
sure.
it, guys. Find out and let me know. That's a cool one.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was 27 too, right? Brian Jones.
I think he was. Yes.
See, the only one that wasn't was Lane Stanley. He was 30 something.
30 something. Yeah.
Damn, the 27 Club. What do you think about that?
It's a coincidence. It's an eerie coincidence. But if you look at the trajectory of a typical musician, and they get big in their early 20s, and they have about 4 or 5 years before they can really completely destroy themselves, and that turns out to be about 27. So it's the 27 Club just is basically vindication or confirmation of a pattern that can have in a musician's life if they're not careful.
It's a pretty cool year too. 27.
Well,
it's very romanticized.
It
obviously.
is very romanticized. Yeah.
So what were you doing when you were 27?
27. I was. Where was I? 27.
Were you still in Manitoba? That's what I read.
Let
You
me
were
think.
from,
Let me
from
think.
out there.
89. No, I was here.
Were you in Hamilton?
No, I was at CFNY.
Oh, okay.
I was at I'd be 3 years into my time at CFNY.
And what were you doing before that?
I was at a radio station in Winnipeg for 2 years. And then before that, I was at a radio station in Brandon, Manitoba for 9 months. And then before that, my first full-time job was in Kenora, Ontario. And then before that, I was doing part-time at a radio station quite literally in the middle of a wheat field in Manitoba.
Whoa. So you basically did radio full-time starting like, what, 23 or something?
I would have been 1983, so I would have been 21.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
So you just straight out, like, right from the jump. Did you have any other jobs? Like, what did you, like...
No.
Just radio forever?
Yeah, that's all I've ever... I mean, going through university and high school, I worked in a ice cream shop, and I worked in a grocery store, and I worked at a drum store. But no, I was always... Now that you mention it, I've never had any other job except a job in radio.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, well, and no other full-time jobs other than jobs in radio and media. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you guys, when a new album would come out, would you and all your buddies just get high and then one guy would buy it and you'd all
I would
listen
be the
to
guy
it?
buying it.
You were the guy that
I
bought
was
it.
the guy. My house was directly across the street from the high school. So rather than sit in the cafeteria over lunch, all my buddies would come over to the house and we'd play ping pong and listen to whatever record I bought.
That's perfect.
And so I was because I was the one that always had a job, and all my money went to either my stereo or my record collection. And I would, hey, Alan's got the new Rush record. Let's go over and listen to his at his place.
Oh yeah, Rush. They were bumping.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that in what was it, 1980? It was January of 1980. Got the new Rush album, Permanent Waves, and we all came over to my place to listen to it at lunch. Cracked the shrink wrap on it and looked at the artwork and started going through the liner notes. And at the bottom of this song called Spirit of Radio was a little inscription that said, dedicated to the spirit of radio, alive and well in Brampton so far, something along those lines.
Brampton?
Yeah. So I thought, this is a song about a real radio station.
Oh, okay.
And it turned out to be CFNY.
Ooh.
And I thought back then that, wouldn't it be cool one day if I worked there? Now I've spent how many years have I spent there? It's almost 30 years.
When did you put those two together? Like the Quinky Dink. This is before you worked there.
Yeah, this is long before I worked there, and I got the job in '86. So it was '86 where I went, well, that's kind of a weird full circle, isn't it?
Did you tell them that when you were?
Oh yeah,
nice.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys listen to 2112?
That was my introduction to Rush.
What a banger!
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite Rush album.
Was that the first Pert album too?
No, the first Pert album was Fly at Night.
So was that before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there was the Rush album with John Rutsey. Then there was Fly By Night with Neil Peart. Then there was Caress of Steel, which didn't do very well. Then there was 2112, and that was the big one.
Yeah, that song, man, that album was like a 20-minute, like the first half.
It was the first side of the album.
Just bananas.
Yeah,
it's like 5 songs in one.
And I've been working with off and on. Been working with Rush professionally for a number of years now. I mean, I know Getty. I've got something coming up. I'm going to do something with Alex next month. All those years, though, never met Neil.
That's
never.
Yeah, he's from where my parents live.
Port Dalhousie.
I was going to say out in Cayuga. He's very close to Caledonia.
Oh, okay.
Like Haldeman County, out that way. Yeah, most of the guys that listen to my show, like they're younger and they want like, big YouTubers, TikTokers, rappers. But I don't care about any of those guys. I want to have like Geddy Lee or like, you know, Randy Bachman. Like those guys are cool.
Oh, they got all kinds of stories. Randy has got a billion stories. Geddy's got a billion stories.
Yeah, like the rock star days. There's no phones.
Nope.
You were kings on Earth. Literally, you'd ride into a city on horseback, and that was it.
Pretty much. There was no, now I'm not excusing any of this, but there was no Me Too situation.
No.
There were no camera phones. There was no social media. There was, there was a certain amount of, behind the curtain stuff.
Yeah.
That, whatever happened backstage or in the hotel room or on the bus stayed backstage in the hotel room or on the bus.
Plus in the 60s, all those drugs too.
There was all kinds of weird stuff going on back then. And it was, now it's more of a business, much more corporatized. But back in the 60s, things started getting really corporatized in the early 1970s. But before then, it was like, whatever, we don't know what we're doing. We'll just make it up as we go along.
Yeah, everybody's winging it, eh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I know Gene Simmons has like 3,000 kills or something ridiculous like that.
Probably more.
Fuck.
Probably more.
See, that's just like you can't do that anymore. It's just it's impossible.
No, you can't.
I'm trying.
No, you just can't. It cannot be done. It cannot be done.
Yeah.
And if you tried, you would be, called out, rightly so.
Yeah.
And your career would be ruined.
Yeah. Damn. That's crazy to think about, actually.
Yeah.
Kiss. So Gene Simmons, he never drank either, which
Nope.
is, there's a couple guys like that in rock. Charlie Watts, right?
No, Charlie had a alcohol problem for a while.
Oh, well,
and that was. But you talk to Gene. Gene has never smoked, never done drugs, doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Yet he's got a brand new vodka on the market. Go figure.
Interesting.
There's a whole subsection of punk rock called straight edge, where no smoking, no drugs, no alcohol.
So Kiss.
Well, Kiss would be in the not Gene specifically. I don't know about Paul, but then the rest of the band, if
Who else was straight edge, man?
There have been a number of people that have recovered.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But this isn't the sort of thing that they make a big deal about.
Maybe like Ringo, maybe, I don't know.
Ringo is a hardcore vegetarian. He's 81 years old. He looks like he's 61 years old.
Yeah, he looks good.
He looks really good, and they all gave up smoking. They all are vegetarians. Well, him and Paul are all vegetarians.
Yeah,
and they look good for their age.
Oh yeah, super good. Yeah, Paul McCartney. There's a conspiracy about him.
Oh, the Paul is dead thing?
My first job, I was like grade 12, and I was working for an agricultural company, and there's this guy on our shift, and he was just the biggest conspiracy head. Like, it would rain, and he'd be like, yeah, like they wanted it to rain today.
It's chemtrails, man.
No, not even chemtrails. He's like, no, they got the balloon up there. And one of those, yeah. Everything was a conspiracy. And then one day he said Paul McCartney, and I was like, whoa. I actually want to hear this one, because I love rock. And he sold he gave me the pitch, and then at the end of it, he could tell I wasn't buying it, and he's like, just believe what you want to believe, man.
Well, people went really deep into this. It began with
tell us the Paul McCartney conspiracy.
So somewhere there was a Detroit DJ. No, sorry, there was somebody had written in a college newspaper that they had discovered all kinds of clues in the Beatles' music that hinted that Paul had died in a car accident in November of 1966. And this was picked up by a DJ in Detroit who started talking about it and uncovering and playing all these little bits and pieces. And from there, it just kind of exploded. And the biggest hint was right there on front of the Sgt. Pepper album.
Right, yeah.
With the grave site. And Paul McCartney is actually dressed differently than the others. Or has what is it? Oh no, he has a patch on his shoulder. If you open it up, there's a patch and it says OPD, which of course stands for officially pronounced dead, which is not true. Somebody had given the band an OPP police patch in 1964, and when they were putting together these Sgt. Pepper costumes, they found that patch in a box someplace, and they thought, well, this is cool. We'll just sew it on Paul's shoulder. But then if you look on the back of the album, all three Beatles are facing forward. Paul is facing backwards. Then you look at the song like
Day in the Life.
Day in the Life. He blew his mind out in a car.
Yeah.
Well, somebody did blow his mind out in a car, but it was an aristocratic friend who actually died in November of 1960. Not Paul. And it goes on and on to the point, we go to the Abbey Road album. They're walking across the street, and here's a priest, here's an undertaker, and there's Paul. He's barefoot, which is sign that he's dead. I am the walrus. All walrus is a sign of death in some cultures. So here's a clue for you all. The walrus is Paul. All kinds of weirdo stuff. Oh, then there's pictures comparing the length of his ears before this all happened and after it happened, and it just that proves that this is an imposter.
That's
that took
a
his
lot,
place.
man.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it goes so deep. It is so weird.
The hardest part for me would be because Paul's such a brilliant writer and performer.
Well,
how do you fake?
You don't.
You'd have to find somebody that's.
Don't. I went to school with a guy who was just like your friend, and it was Beatles mixed in with Charles Manson, who also had a Beatles connection, and he believed every drop of that conspiracy, every drop. And he became really identified with John Lennon. He was tall. He was thin. He started wearing the granny glasses.
Yeah, cool hair and a beard.
And that's the way he got. And then one day in December of 1980, I get home and I'm watching Monday Night Football. Howard Cosell announces that John Lennon is dead.
Yeah, mid-game.
And I phone up to my buddy. Says, "You hear about this?" And the weird thing was that the guy who killed John Lennon was Mark David Chapman. My buddy's name was Chapman as well.
Whoa.
So, it was just, and I think he married a Korean woman.
Damn.
Oh, yeah, it was just weird.
Did he go off the rails after that?
I don't know. I lost track of him.
That's it, eh?
Yeah.
Is he in jail?
I don't know where he is. I honestly don't know where he is.
Fuck, damn, that's heavy. What classic rock artists have actually successfully trolled somebody? They put a hidden message. Kind of like, what if the Beatles did?
Okay, well,
Did anybody get away with
if you
that?
go into the Pink Floyd The Wall,
Oh yeah.
they have a backwards message on the album. And it says, "Congratulations, you've discovered the hidden message. Send your response to something, 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 something." So, yeah, that was trolling people who believed that there were backwards messages regarding Satan and
Just
sex.
backwards text. That's it.
Yeah. Well, no, they actually, that's what it was. Roger Waters or David Gilmour saying this. "Congratulations, you found the hidden message."
Whoa, that's kind of cool. A little fortune cookie on there.
Yeah, and there's that backwards messages used to be a really weird thing.
Do you think there's ever going to be a band where there's like 2 or 3 brilliant writers in one band?
Well, people will say that we have those today. It's just that they're not as big as they're the people that came before them, and you're not going to have artists as big today as we did back in the day. And the reason is because everybody is their own music director. You can choose whatever music you want to listen to. You don't have to rely on the record store, the video channel, the radio station, the music magazine to tell you what you need to listen to. You can find it for yourself. So as a result, there's no consensus. There's no center. The music industry the music culture has no center. They come together, break apart, come together, break apart. And it's not about albums anymore. It's not about tours anymore. It's about individual songs on playlists. So nobody can gain the kind of traction and have the kind of popularity as artists had in the pre-internet era.
Do you think that brilliant writers would have more incentive to go solo now than before?
It doesn't, everybody's just trying to break through.
Yeah.
There's just so much noise out there. Let me go back to that point where, even the biggest record store, and if you went into a record store in 1998, biggest record store you've ever been into, chances are there were 100,000 records in that store that you could choose from. 100,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But right now on Spotify, you have 95 million tracks.
True.
And it's not just, and in the record store, it was mostly, a lot of the stuff would be contemporary stuff in the last 2 years, plus the hot stuff, right? On Spotify and Apple Music and all the rest of them, those 95 million tracks are all of the songs ever written in the history of humanity. So
that's a lot.
You're not competing against your contemporaries, you're competing against the music of mankind.
You used to just wing it, eh? You just go and be like, yo, it's a cool album cover.
Yeah. And now it's just like there's too much music out there.
Have you ever found like a cool album cover and then you put it in the player and it sucked?
Oh, yeah. There was a band, the one that burned me the most was a band from the 70s called Stars, STRZ.
Okay, never heard of those guys.
No, and they had an album called Attention Shoppers.
Oh.
And I thought, okay.
Yeah.
I bought it, played it once, that's it.
Just trash, eh?
I just got burned by it.
Were there any albums you bought and you're like, oh man, this is ridiculous?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't understand it at first, but I bought a Joy Division album back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I guess it was Unknown Pleasures.
Yeah.
And it was black. It was just had this weird thing on the front and had no liner notes, and okay. And put that one on. I was like, I'm in uncharted territory here.
Did you and the boys jam out to Back in Black? Because that was 1980.
Yeah, back then I was in Winnipeg, and there's a group of us, there were 5 of us, and we're all pretty much, straight ahead rock fans. We had one rock station, FM rock station, that we could listen to, and that was our whole world.
Right.
Whatever they played, well, that was the world of rock. Mm-hmm. And and then we'd fight. I mean, I was learning to play the drums back then, and I would say that AC/DC was no good because the drums were boring.
Oh,
and I completely.
Well, I mean, they are kind of.
But that's you. When you're a musician, you serve the song.
Yeah.
And AC/DC songs require just a big, powerful backbeat all the way through it. You can't play like Neil Peart on an AC/DC song.
He had a lot of competition too, man.
Yeah.
Well, John Bonham, Keith Moon.
But that's a different type of music, right?
It's true.
So yeah, it was that. It was Zeppelin. It was Deep Purple. It was Van Halen. They changed our lives back then, because when Eddie Van Halen first appeared, it was like, who the hell is this guy?
I got a cool fact for you about Van Halen. You might know this. Apparently, up until Eddie Van Halen came on the scene, everybody would just use classic music like notes, but they couldn't understand what he was doing. So they're like, hey, we have to be able to break it down another way. So they invented guitar tabs with numbers.
Maybe it's true, because Eddie was doing some really weird things with the hammering on, especially.
Yeah.
And sometimes he would turn his back to the audience because he didn't want anybody to see what he was doing.
Oh, sneaky.
But he didn't invent hammer-ons, but he took them to the next level.
Right.
And then, of course, he completely rewired his guitars. He completely rewired his amps. God knows what he was using for effects pedals. He was just, he was a one-of-a-kind guy. I mean, I remember hearing Running with the Devil for the first time.
Yeah.
And then that goes into Eruption. And
I was going to say,
really
what was it like hearing Eruption for the first time on vinyl?
What is going on here?
Yeah.
Because guitar solos, that's 78. So guitar solos were, could be long, screechy things that were fairly self-indulgent. I mean, there were good soloists like Clapton and Page and Hendrix and all the rest of them. But then there were a lot of really bad soloists who would just...
Poison. Yeah.
Well, that was before that. But here comes, Eruption, and it's got structure. It's got melody. It's got sounds that we'd never heard before. How did he do that?
It was like shredding too. It was so quick, but it was like arpeggio. It was perfect.
Completely. We had no idea. Again, you had to be alive in 1978 and hearing this for the first time and staring at the speakers going, what the hell is going on here?
And then it tears into You Really Got Me.
Yeah.
Which everybody knows is like like when You Really Got Me came out by the Kinks, everyone's like, man, this is a banger. This is hard. This is nice. Yeah. But then he took it and he just blew it out of the park. And it's like, this is what songs could be
if you added this to it.
Yeah. And it was just next level.
Nuts. Absolutely. Like a lot of people that tried to do You Really Got Me before that point. But nobody did it like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like Hendrix blowing Bob Dylan's
completely, like All Along the Watchtower. Yeah.
I never even heard the original version, man.
It's not very good.
No. I feel like a lot of Dylan's songs that are, I mean, like a Rolling Stone, that's a banger. That's a banger. Yeah,
Rolling Stone, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Maze Farm. I'm not a Dylan fan, so I'm not really qualified to go much deeper than that.
Yeah, he was very like right time, right place, I think, in the U.S.
He was. He came out of the folk era, and his career was shepherded by a guy named John Hammond, and he got a deal with Columbia Records, and he managed to take the folk sound, the folk scene of the late 50s and early 60s, blossom it into something much more political, much more something, and then when he goes electric in 65, everything changes.
Have you ever combined Pink Floyd and mushrooms at the same time?
No, but I imagine that would be a pretty trippy thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Apparently that used to be the thing back in the day.
Well, it was. I mean, Pink Floyd were the preeminent, what we would used to call headphone bands. So you would...
interesting.
Yeah.
So you'd actually have to pay attention kind of thing?
What you would do is you'd put it on, turn out the lights, put on a set of headphones and get baked.
Yeah.
And just go with the music.
Whoa.
So that was and Pink Floyd, starting with Dark Side of the Moon, maybe with metal.
Trippy album.
Yeah, and headphones were still a fairly new thing back then. They started coming out for consumers in the 1960s, and they were big, heavy things. I had a pair of Koss headphones, and I think they weighed 3 pounds.
Damn.
No, that's not an exaggeration. 3 pounds. So you can only wear them for so long before your head got sore and your ears got sore. But I'd lie in my bedroom listening to Dark Side of the Moon with my eyes closed in the dark. Are you kidding me? That was a real experience.
Yeah, that must have been crazy.
Yeah.
So when did you when did classic rock stop becoming classic rock?
Well, classic rock was an invention of the radio industry in the middle 1980s when they realized that things were starting to change and that a lot of the new music coming out was incongruent with a lot of the classics, the stuff that had been made earlier. So hair metal, for example, was getting really big towards the end of the 1980s. And a lot of people who were into the original, the first generation of guitar rock were not real happy with or being polarized by the Motley Crues and the Rats and the Poisons of this world. So there was a couple of guys who, Lee Abrams was one, who devised a radio format that focused on the best of the classic stuff, which would be pre-1985. And that's what classic rock was for a while. It would creep up so that the cutoff date went from 85 to 87 to 89. But then you get to 1990 and it gets really weird because, again, you have another big sea change and grunge comes in.
Yeah, it's different now.
It's different. So classic rock couldn't, except up until recently, really move beyond that 1990 or 1991 era because the music was so different. You couldn't play, Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit next to Kashmir by Led Zeppelin because they came from two different worlds, two different generations.
I feel like Guns N' Roses, though, could get a pass.
Guns N' Roses did get a pass.
They got a pass.
And they were probably the last of those bands.
Yeah.
Because their peak was 87, 88, 89.
Oh, yeah, true. They were from the 80s, too.
Yeah, 87, 88, 89.
Interesting.
And they were the biggest band in the world. And they were always touring. So them and maybe the Black Crowes.
Yeah, true. They were like 90, 91.
They're 90, 91. And then grunge hits and everything changes. So that when grunge hit, that creates this real big delineation. There's your classic rock, mainstream rock, greatest rock songs of all time, and the alternative crowd. And they hated each other.
Yeah, I bet they did.
You weren't allowed. If you were an alternative kid, you were not allowed to like the Beatles.
Yeah, so did the grunge guys think all that shit was corny?
It was corny. It was old. It was outdated. It was dinosaur rock. It did not speak to us.
Whoa.
Meanwhile, the classic rock people are thinking, what are these kids doing?
Purists, eh?
Well, they were purists. And listen to this. I mean, it's basically warmed over Neil Young and Black Sabbath.
Whoa.
So there was a real tribal fight between the two.
Good for marketing, though.
Well, it certainly made it very easy because you were either on this side or that side.
What do you think about Radiohead?
They are one of those bands. They are the 90s generation of music fans' version of Pink Floyd.
Whoa. I felt like I knew that was coming. I knew you were going to say that.
They are in a world of their own. I mean, I don't say that they sound like Pink Floyd, but what I say that they are so different and so distinctive and have this thing that nobody can seem to replicate.
Like they experiment a lot.
Completely.
Yeah, kind of switch genres.
Yeah.
Yeah, they totally went away from rock. They were when they came out, they were heavy.
Radiohead's Radiohead.
Yeah.
And the first album they're not really keen on, but from the second album forward, they were going to do things their own way. I mean, they're all great musicians, and they came up with some really, really cool stuff.
Do you know the story about Creep? How they
tried to sabotage it?
Yeah. Johnny Greenwood. He's like, he was frustrated.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they're like, yo, that was sick.
Yeah, we'll take that.
It was live, too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I got a couple stories like that. I wonder how many of them you know. Okay, let me know. Okay, so Jethro Tull, Aqualung, they were struggling on the solo.
Okay.
And then mid-solo, Jimmy Page went into the control room studio box, gave a double thumbs up, and then he just kept going with the solo, and they nailed it one take.
Could be. When Jimmy Page walks into this and gives you a thumbs up, you're gonna be pretty pumped.
Can't You Hear Me Knocking was after a big hangover. Keith Richards was just hungover in the morning.
Wait, just Can You Hear Me Knocking?
Yeah, I think Satisfaction, he didn't have a recorder?
He did. Satisfaction, he had a tape recorder. He was staying
next to his bed or something?
In a hotel in Miami. He wakes up, he hears this riff in his head, plays it a bunch of times on the cassette player, falls asleep with the cassette player running, wakes up the next morning, and there's like 30 seconds of him playing this riff and then 45 minutes of him snoring.
Second half of Can't You Hear Me Knocking was a jam. It was live.
Yeah, probably. That's the way they did things back then.
Do you know any other cool songs like that? Little tidbits?
There's so many. I mean, I'd have to think about it, but there's just so many different things that have when you're working in a studio. This is the interesting thing, is when you've got a bunch of guys or a bunch of people working together in a studio, magical things happen because you're just goofing around. You make a connection. Everybody gets into a groove. Somebody does something, whether on purpose or by accident. Everybody falls into lockstep behind that, and then miraculous things happen. And you can't get that when you're making music in your bedroom. You just can't.
That's true. I know the Beatles, they were broken up for a while, but one of the last times they were in the studio, Paul, George, and John all riffed back and forth, exchanged guitar solos.
Oh, so what you're talking about with the second half of the Abbey Road album?
That album, but the song was Golden Slumbers Carry That Weight.
That's right. So they were just goofing around, and they thought, okay, here's what we're going to do. We need something to carry this song forward towards a conclusion. So they just had the tape running, and three of them just traded licks.
Just jammed, yeah.
Just jammed.
So sick.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best album of all time? I know you probably got like 10,
man.
but if you had to narrow it down to 3.
Well, my favorite album of all time is the Who's Next. Because I think that's
a banger, yeah.
That's
Won't Get Fooled Again.
That's and Won't Get Fooled Again is the best rock song ever written. I won't have anybody argue with me on that.
My dad agrees. That's what he told me from a young age. That's the one. Meet the new boss.
There's that song has every single element a rock song needs to have.
Yeah.
And there is nothing about that song that you could change in any way, shape, or form to make it better.
No.
It's perfect.
The solo in the middle is so confusing too on the guitar.
Oh, it's nuts.
It's like it's not even a solo. It's like it's so different.
The whole thing. I mean,
it's like riffs.
He was using a Hammond organ run through a very early type of synthesizer called an ARP, ARP 2600, and that was all on tape. So the band he committed all this that organ sound to tape, and then the band played to the tape.
Live?
Yeah.
Nice. Vocals too?
Well, there would have been a scratch vocal for sure.
Yeah.
But
that yell though, you know?
Yeah, that he did that once.
That's fucking sick.
He was working with a producer named Glyn Johns, and Glyn said, okay, well, I think we need something to bring us back into the final bit of the song. So, Roger, why don't you just give us a scream? All right, well, goes in there and just lets it rip once, and it's the greatest scream ever committed to tape.
Yeah, it's goat tier. I know he did a little one rip earlier in the song.
Yeah, but not like that.
A little test rip. Yeah. That was probably his first thing, and the second one was boom.
Yeah, you can only do that once or twice in a recording session before there's nothing left for your throat.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Which is why, if you go back to Smells Like Teen Spirit, the vocal track on that is the compilation of 3 takes, and they couldn't do it anymore because Kurt's voices was done.
Apparently, Kurt never liked doing doubles or triples, so Butch Vig convinced him to by saying, "Hey, John Lennon did it," and he's like, fine."
Yeah, because it wasn't a punk rock thing to do. But Butch Vig figured. Well, let's just say that Butch Vig was right.
What do you think about the? Because I was thinking about the Who back in the day. They had a concert organized by the Hells Angels, or it might have been the Rolling Stones.
You're thinking about Altamont.
Yeah.
So that was 1969, December 3rd, 1969. They wanted to have a Woodstock West, and they couldn't find a place to do it. They ended up with this racetrack, very badly organized. Hell's Angels were hired as security, if you can believe it.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point, a guy apparently pulled a gun in the first couple of rows, and the Hell's Angels beat this guy to death. So it was supposed to be this free concert of peace and love, and it turns out to be just a disaster.
Segueing from that, what do you think about the Travis Scott thing that happened recently? That was a big shit show.
Well, that was, and it's weird. It looks like there was a failure of crowd control, and they're going to have to determine exactly what that failure was and who's responsible and how to prevent something like that from happening in the future.
Yeah, I think he's fucked, man.
He's got a problem because, but at the same time, he's got a problem because it happened on his watch.
Well, he's done that multiple times, though, like encourage people to break through the gates.
Right, but nobody's been killed.
No.
So here's a situation where, he's on stage in front of lots and lots of people. He's got lights in his eyes, and he can't see what's happening. I mean, I've been on stage in that sort of situation. You cannot see what's going down in front of you. But at the same time, an ambulance comes into the pit, and it's like, maybe I should pay attention to what's going on with this ambulance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, his story is that he didn't know about it till like a day or two later.
Yeah,
I mean, wouldn't people have told him while he was up there?
Well, that's the point. So what was the chain of command? What was the chain of communications? Yeah. Why did the cops declare that something was going on at 9:38, and why did he carry on the show until 10:15?
Mm-hmm.
So there should have been something somewhere where it's like, we have a crowd emergency, stop the show now. Why was the show not stopped when it was evident and recognized that there was a problem in the pit?
Yeah, so he's in a big lawsuit now, like $1 billion,
10 billion.
think. 10 billion.
10. The total number of lawsuits, if you add them all up, it's around 10 billion.
So Live Nation can take that hit. They got a lot of money. 10 billion. I mean, buddy, 10 billion's a lot, but
it's a lot. But I mean, listen, the issue too is that this is in Texas. Texas, they always have big lawsuits.
I didn't think about that.
Oh no, Texas is a very litigious sort of place, and it's often, if you file a lawsuit in Texas, you want to be in certain jurisdictions because the juries there tend to be very favorable when it comes to the plaintiffs. So I mean, there's about 3,000 lawsuits that will have to be combined, because no way that the court system can handle 3,000 lawsuits.
I heard they combined a bunch into
so they'll combine them some more and some more and some more, and then figure out exactly, there'll be a bunch of preliminary hearings, and Apple Music, for example, is listed as one of the defendants, and their only job there was to live stream the show.
Yeah, that's
so
a little excessive there. Probably a lot of fluff in there.
Well, there's a lot of fluff, and if they were just live streaming the show, they had no say over crowd control. But it's Apple, the most valuable company in the world, so of course you're going to name them.
Do you think that? I mean, it's probably the standard that Live Nation takes most of the heat for this, but do you think how much responsibility could they argue Travis had? Do you think
don't know. That's up to the courts.
Yeah.
That's the truth is going to get pretty murky.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many people involved, right?
There's so many people, and so the people are going to have to worry about going forward, because this will affect insurance rates.
What I was going to say, do you think that he'll ever be insured again to that level?
It's not just Travis Scott. I mean, it's anybody who wants to play in front of a big festival. When you have a situation like this and you have a $10 billion lawsuit, the insurance people are going to look at their actuarial tables and go, well, you want to have insurance? Your premium is going to be this much. And you know what's going to happen? It's going to filter down to the price of concert tickets.
Have you ever seen anything like this in the past? And if so, how did it go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been the most famous one would have been The Who, 1979 in Cincinnati.
11 people die, right?
Yeah, but they died at the doors. They didn't die at
what? Why? Okay.
Because they were trying to get in.
Yeah.
So they died in a pile up at the doors of the Riverfront Stadium. The other one was 2000, the Roskilde Festival in Denmark, where a bunch of people slipped on some wet ground and ended up in front of the stage, crushed during a Pearl Jam set. They stopped the show. And Pearl Jam was named in a lawsuit, but they were absolved from it. But Pearl Jam almost broke up as a result of that, because they found it too
Damn. So, do you know what the settlement was with the?
No.
Okay, what predictions do you have for rock? What are the best bands you've heard in the last 5 years that are actually new?
Well, I'm a big fan of anything that's happening in the UK, simply because things iterate there so quickly.
They still got it there, eh?
Well, you've got a lot of people in a very small. Very, very small area.
Yeah.
So ideas travel very quickly, and people learn of things more quickly than they do here. Especially if you've got the BBC, you have a national radio show or a national radio network, multiple national radio networks that can reinforce what's going on, as opposed to around here where we only have regional stuff outside the CBC. There is no real national radio network in the U.S. outside of NPR, and they're not a music. They don't care about music so much. So I like the British stuff because it turns it's never dull. Now if we were to do this next week, I'd have a bunch of different names for you.
Yeah.
But today there's a band called Wet Leg.
Okay.
There's another band called Shame. Another band called Idols, IDLES. Another band called Cabbage.
A lot of one name, one word names.
Yeah.
Royal Blood, eh?
Yeah.
So they brought back a little bit of hype, I think.
They did. Royal Blood's a good band.
Highly Suspect?
Yeah.
How sick are they?
They're good.
The first two albums.
Yeah.
Third one's a little more,
Yeah. No, there's lots of stuff out there that's good. The trick is that there's just too much of it.
True.
And if you're listening to a really good song, you're going, wow, this is good. I wonder what else is really good out there. So you move on to the next.
Back onto the shuffle.
Exactly. And you don't what else? What is everybody else listening to? Oh my God, I'm missing out on so much. And that gets into people's heads and skip button, skip button, skip button.
How much were concert tickets when you were like?
I remember going to see Elvis Costello at the Playhouse Theater, 1979, I think. I paid $7.
Why are they so expensive now?
Insurance rates. That's a big part.
Yeah,
and
true.
concerts, to stage a concert right now is more expensive than it has ever been. Before you go on tour, you have to invest a lot of money in your stage show. And people are expecting a production, a spectacle, theater. So right now the economics are, if you stage a big tour, like say you're the Foo Fighters, you stage a big tour, you put a ton of money up front into this, you have to hire the trucks and the roadies and design the set, and get the, rent the gear, build the stage, all that sort of stuff. That's all upfront money. So you're going to play, let's say, just for the sake of argument, 25 shows. Okay? You're not going to start making money until show 20. Because everything you make up until that point goes to pay off your upfront costs.
Damn. So was that little? I thought touring there was a shitload of money.
There is for those last 5 shows.
Oh, those are just pure profit, eh?
Right. So
Cake.
if you go on tour, and the profit from those last 5 shows, in the millions.
Damn.
But if you go on tour and a show gets canceled, well, that means you only have 4 shows worth of profit.
Oh.
And another show gets canceled, you get 3 shows worth of profit.
No.
So that's again, I'm being very general about the way the industry works, but that's a big part of it.
Man, fuck, we did like an hour 20.
There you go.
I can't think of anything else at the moment. But
okay.
Buddy, what's the prediction for classic rock? What do you think?
Classic rock will continue to survive. It will become younger in terms of the artists that are considered to be classic rock. I'm sorry, Nirvana's classic rock. Pearl Jam's classic rock. Soundgarden's classic rock.
When does it stop becoming classic rock? Like Oasis, maybe?
Well, I think you would probably be able to 1996. I would say that the maximum you could go forward or go back or whatever is 95 or 96 right now for the moment. But in 10 years, Korn and Slipknot are going to be classic rock.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, listen,
Creed.
Time marches on.
So in your mind, take the numbers away. What was the last real classic rock band?
Classic rock band?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about
like of the 90s? What was the last we can end it here.
The last rock star, the last rock band of the old school kind.
Yeah, it didn't have to be the biggest, but like the final, the dopest,
Nirvana.
Boom.
Nirvana would be the last of the new
kind of new old.
Well, they were the last of the breed, selling tens of millions of records. A front man who's larger than life, who has a tragic downfall and a tremendous amount of influence that followed. Afterwards. So the last big rock band in the traditional rock sense is Nirvana.
Damn. Well, that sucks to the Gallagher brothers, but thanks they just missed it, eh?
Just missed it.
Okay, well, thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out Alan Cross. You have a shitload of content.
Yeah,
man.
go to a journalofmusicalthings.com. It's my website, and also there's my ongoing history of new music podcast. There are hundreds that you can listen to, download for free, and just go nuts on.
And locally, you're on like what, Q107,
Q107 and 102.1 The Edge.
Those are the two, eh?
Those are the two right now. Alan at allencross.ca if you want to reach me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Be sure to hit that like button. Share this with your dad, because I know your dad loves classic rock. Share it with your buddies too, but especially your old man. And join the Discord too. We just started a Discord, so if you guys want to talk about the episode or whatever you thought, join the Discord. Links in the description, and we will see you next week. New episodes every single Monday. Peace out.